Hello everybody, hope everybody's doing great today. Appreciate those who watch this video. Hope you enjoy it. And thank you for those who have subscribed. Appreciate you as well. So today we're going to be talking about gods and generals. Quick story about gods and generals. Take about 10 seconds here. My wife and I were dating at the time this movie came out. Went to the theaters about 8:15. Thought we'd see an hour and a half to 2 hour movie. Little did we know that it was a lot longer. We saw the intermission sign come up and we looked at each other and we're like, what did we get ourselves into? And then we ended up leaving the theater to about 12:30. We wasn't planning on spending 4 hours in the theater, but that's what we did. So let's talk about gods and generals. This is actually before Gettysburg. It's connected to Gettysburg. I guess it's a prequel, I guess you can say. But, having said that, Gettysburg is a top-notch movie. Gods in general, not as good as Gettysburg, but it's not a terrible movie either. You get some pretty cool battle scenes in this one. The highlights are probably Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville for the two highlights of the movie. You also get to see the very first battle of the Civil War, which was Bull Run, I believe. Or I guess it depends on what part of the country you are in, right? It basically begins this movie, gathering my thoughts here where I want to go with this review. The movie does begin with basically the South starting to succeed. We get a little background on why they are succeeding. It's always an argument. Was the Civil War about slavery or was it about states' rights? I know. This is the kind of argument, or not argument, but discussion my dad and I had. He was always saying it's states' right. I was always saying it's slavery. And I kind of said, the South was only fighting for one state right, and that's to have slaves, right? So fundamentally, when you think about that, it's about slavery because that's the only state rights that they're really wanting to have. Anyways, you do get a little bit of background on what their argument is, why General Lee fought for the South. It was because he's a Virginian, and back then people were more loyal to their states more than to the country, and he didn't feel like it was right for the government to invade his home state, and he didn't want to be head of the army. So that's kind of his excuse or reasoning. I should say excuse, but reasoning for fighting for Virginia. This movie is more like pro-South movie. Especially, or the reason for that is because it really covers General Jackson's military command in the South. It really does revolve around Stonewall Jackson and this movie. So that's why it's kind of like, if you watch it, you're like, man, this movie's really pro-South. That's the reason, is because it's all centered around Jackson, how he commanded, his beliefs, his life is like 90% of this movie. It does touch upon a little bit of the North. It does kind of follow Longfellow. Is that his name? That's not Longfellow. I can't remember. Chamberlain is it. Chamberlain of the North, from Gettysburg. He was played by Jeff Daniels. He's played by Jeff Daniels again. Jeff Daniels is a very good actor. He'd be really good in these dramas like this one. Very serious actor. And then he could kill it in movies like Dumb and Dumber, where he's just kind of like a buffoon and an idiot. It's like silly all the time. Jeff Daniels, back in the day, was very versatile, great actor. I love Jeff Daniels as an actor. That he's very great. Don't know him personally, so he could be a scumbag personal life, but as an actor, he's great. Or he could be a wonderful guy too. Why do I have to be negative on his personal life, right? But he kills it in this role. All the actors, the acting is fantastic in this movie. It is a little long, like I said, it is pro-South, but you do get some cool battle scenes. You do get some to get into the logistics of why Lee and Jackson do the things they do, and then you get maybe like 15 minutes of Burnside and why Burnside decided to attack Fredericksburg in a certain manner, and in the manner that he did, and some of the protests that the other Northern generals had for him doing it, like Hancock. And then you do get a little bit of commentary on the slavery issue of the South. I think my favorite part of the movie is when, Jackson is with his cook-slave here. His slave cook-slave, anyways. And, General Jackson is praying about the great to God to help them free themselves from northern aggressors. And then, he's praying all this, and then the cook slave, he kind of throws it all in his face when he prays to God, like he wants his people to be free. And Jackson, after he gets done praying, he sees this guy who he kind of admires, Jackson does. And, he still tells him how it is the desire of Lee, if it's true, that the South did want some of the slaves to fight for him. And if they did fight for him, that's going to give them the freedom. But if they did that, the reasoning, I guess, from the little studying I did in history, I did study this, is that Jefferson Davis and the uppers there felt like if they did that, then why were they even fighting the Civil War if they're going to free the slaves? So that's the reason why they always turned down Lee's request for that to happen, because, Lee needs soldiers to help win this battle, and what better way than guaranteeing these slaves that they would have freedom if they fought for the South. But, I kind of liked how he kind of throws that, the whole reasoning from Jackson's prayer back into his face. It was great. And then we have the slaves, the house slaves, where the North's getting ready to attack Fredericksburg, and how, the white families try and get their slaves to follow them out, and they're like, no, we'll stay here, we'll protect the house. What's they do? Protect the house. They get the northern soldiers not to raid their house and destroy it like they're destroying all the other houses, by claiming that it's their house, which is was unusual but not impossible in the South. There were black people who were free in the South, held their own property. There's even black people in the South that owned slaves at that time. I guess one of the most wealthiest slave owners was a black person. But, again, she gives a good speech to the Northerns when they do use their house as a hospital, and how, the desire for her to be free and for her children to be free. So you do got a little bit of commentary in this movie about the slavery issue, with those being the main two issues. And then, it kind of feels like the writers of this movie kind of incorporate like every possible scenario that did happen in the Civil War. So like you said, we got the main part, the important part is the slavery issue, and then it's like, well, there is a story about when these Northerners and these Southern soldiers would occasionally meet and have discussions before they have a big battle. So in this movie, we do got like a discussion between a Southern soldier and a Northern soldier across a river. One of them asks for I think Southern tobacco. Another one asks the Northern for some of his great coffee. They exchange, drink some coffee, smoke a couple puffs off a pipe, make a little joke about Burnside, how bad of a general he is, and stuff like that. So you have like a lot of like everything possible that could have happened in the Civil War happened. Another issue in this one is when one of the Southern soldiers, he's like a very minor role, but he's kind of supposed to represent how soldiers were in the Southern Army, like your common soldier, their feelings and thoughts about fighting the war. You do have an issue where he was saying, guys, I think today's the day I die. When I die, please do this to my possessions, And you have stories where you read diaries and stuff, and stories where soldiers actually knew the day they were going to die. They just had that feeling that this is the day I'm going to die. They had that feeling, and then it would happen. So you kind of get that storyline in there as well. Overall, if you're a Civil War buff, it's a great movie to watch. And if you're somebody who doesn't really know much about Civil War, about why it started, or like why it started, some of the circumstances, it's pretty good to watch as well, especially at the beginning, because you do get the Southern perspective of why they're separating from the Civil War. Not so much about from the North, why they're their reasoning for invading the South. I mean, it's very brief and not too deep into it, but the South, you really get they really try to get you to know why the South took the actions that they did. Overall, it's a pretty good Civil War movie. I think Gettysburg's better. Another really good one off the top of my head is Glory. If I haven't seen Glory, with Matthew Broderick. It is about the first black It's the first black regiment, but it's about a black regiment from Maryland. Has Denzel Washington in it and Morgan Freeman. Very good movie, probably one of the best ones out there. Then, of course, you can watch a miniseries like North and South. But I would recommend Gettysburg and Glory at the top of my head as being one of the best ones. And there's a lot of good Civil War movies out there. I'm just saying those two right there. Maybe not as good as the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme here. Which one is that one? I'm trying to think. Time Cop. Time Cop is a very good Civil War movie. It's a joke. Have a great day. Bye.